Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Irrational Passions Presents. I am Alex O'Neill, and joining me this time, my wonderful, spooky friend, Andrew Taylor.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. It's always good to have you back to talk about Resident Evil.
Yeah.
It's like our thing
Our
now.
old, yeah, it's like our, for those of you that know, Deep Cut Raccoon City Radio podcast that we used to do a while ago. It's kind of like a little redux, I guess you could say, in terms of us getting back to talk about RE4 Remake.
Yes, this day we've been waiting for. Do you
Yeah.
remember, like, we speculated, will they do this at the end of Resident Evil 2?
Yeah, I do remember that. It's kind of insane that they actually did it, because I think at the time a lot of people were not expecting them to have to do it, I guess you could say, because I remember a lot of people were arguing, be like, oh, that game does not need a remake or whatever.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I've played it pretty recently for the first time. Like, it shows its age, but we're here now, and we've gotten a remake of RE4, which is, as a lot of people consider one of the best video games of all time. Definitely one of the most influential video games, of its time. So
yeah, excited to talk about it. But yeah, if you didn't know, welcome. This is Irrational Passions review discussion for Resident Evil 4 2023 edition, because Capcom will not put remake in the title. No, thank you. Actually,
yeah. Did they not do that for 2?
Nope.
Did they do it for 2? Okay, wow.
No, just Resident Evil 2, then
Alright.
Resident Evil 3, then Resident Evil 4.
I kind of like that though. It's crisp,
Yeah, this
Like,
is the Resident Evil 4 of 2023.
Yeah.
People get it as well. It's been however many years, 15 years or whatever.
It's been a while. Yeah.
It's been a while. Yeah, we're here to talk about Resident Evil 4 Remake. Just came out in March, and I would say, like, of the remakes, I think Resident Evil 2 Remake had a lot on it, and then Resident Evil 4 Remake had a lot on it. I think there were lower stakes, certainly for Resident Evil 3 Remake, just because that's not as beloved a game, but I think they did a great job with that as well. And it was funny, like, thinking back to 2 and 3 and playing this game to think of it as like a sequel to those games, right? To the remakes specifically. It's very cool to think what they did, because part of Resident Evil 4 Remake obviously is like redoing everything that was in that game, and everything that was in that game was already so different than anything that had come before it. To then have that done again, where it's like, I would say not so different from everything that came before it at this point. It's a third-person shooter. You got a gun, you aim it, you can move and shoot. Welcome to the future, baby.
Yeah.
But yeah, to have it in front of us, to experience it, to like see how big of a project it actually is as well. So let's get right into it. I would say maybe there's not gonna be any spoilers or anything generally, but maybe toward the end we'll talk about spoilers just to hash it out. But we'll give you proper warning. So if you haven't played the game yet, let's just talk about it. Andrew, how did you feel about Resident Evil 4 Remake?
What a game. Kind of like what you were saying before is, it's, we were talking about, you got a gun, it sets itself apart from what came before it at the time. No, fixed camera angles anymore. Third person action, not so much. There's definitely horror in there, but then to now jump to the remake of 4 and have it feel really organic to the other 2 remakes that have already come before it. I love this like connection, this like almost like redoing of the timeline, I guess you could say, that Capcom's doing to kind of make everything feel cohesive. Is really, really impressive. And so yeah, it's definitely, it's a game. Like, it's not to say that it's 100% perfect, I could say in my eyes, but I think it's definitely the best of the remakes.
Yeah.
I think it's it's not trying to reinvent the wheel. And but what it's doing is that it's basically just trying to like write a love letter to the game that kind of did reinvent the wheel, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like Resident Evil 4, like you wouldn't have a Gears of War without Resident Evil 4, you know? Like there's a bunch of other, Uncharted, I guess you could say, other action games. Last of Us, they've even said like Resident Evil 4 is like a huge inspiration of like The Last of Us.
It's
So
funny
like
too,
a lot of the
like seeing
yeah.
that kind of Ouroboros back into
Yeah.
itself when you play Resident Evil 4 remake and everything.
Yeah. And then like for them to kind of just say this isn't like a generational shift again, like this is just basically people who love the original game, who some of even worked on the original game, and they're giving us like a really good experience to be like, okay, like you have the original game, but now you have the remake, and it feels more cohesive because of those other two remakes. So I don't know. It's I've only played through it once. I know you've played through it a couple times. Like I said, I think it's the best remake. I remember at the time that Resident Evil 2 came out, when we were doing Raccoon City Radio, I was just like blown away by that game, and I still am, and I think it's almost different because of how much Metroidvanias have always kind of played into like my gaming experience, and to play one that was just that was done so well. And I never even, I'll admit it, like I never even played the original RE2. I've played it since I've beaten the remake, but just to like play another game that is almost completely different than the second one, but have it feel, you know what I mean? Like have it feel
cohesive,
fresh again. Yeah, it's fresh, but it's still cohesive. I don't know. It's like insane to kind of like think about like them pulling it off. Like, that was 2019 when Resident Evil 2 came out, and like we're in 2023 and they've given us 3 really good remakes. I think this is the best one, and I think RE2 is the second best one, and whatever, however you want to rank those. But I'm really shocked at how well they like pulled it off. Because I have only recently played Resident Evil 4 in the last few years. I didn't just get to play it in 2005 or anything like that. So just to kind of jump off that pretty recent experience to jump into this game and see the differences and see what they've kind of changed around or what they've cut out. I mean, personally, I'm not someone who's much of a purist, to be honest with you, especially when I didn't play the original back in 2005. So like anything that's been added or cut from this game like literally does not bother me like pretty much at all. Because it feels fresh, and that's what I was hoping that it would do. But like I said before already a couple times, it feels cohesive to the other 2 remakes that just came out in the last few years, and I think that's really, really impressive. And sky's the limit pretty much at this point. In terms of like,
totally.
I mean, do you want to remake Resident Evil 5? I mean, for those of you that have not played Resident Evil 5, it's a co-op game. We've both played it together a couple years ago. It's definitely a game. That is definitely a game.
Much less serious, but so is Resident Evil 4 to some extent. But like, we'll talk about it. But the remake kind of realigns some of that in a good
exactly
way.
Yeah, I was just gonna mention that. So I don't know, like they can really do whatever they want at this point, and I'll be there for it definitely, because I think, like I said before, I might have mentioned it, but I know that people had some pretty big problems with Resident Evil 3 remake.
Sure.
And it is what it is. I thought it was completely fine. I had a lot of fun with it. I know that you really liked it a lot too. But I would be really interested to see what they were gonna do if they were gonna remake Resident Evil 5.
Totally.
So yeah.
Yeah, for me, I mean, I loved it. Spoilers. Hey, I think we both probably like this game. Yeah, it's tough, man. Like, it's funny because think of Resident Evil, right? This is like my entry point, Resident Evil 4, back in the day. So we have now looped around from the games that I had never played to the game that it was like where I came in on Resident Evil. And shout out, my high school days, the GameFly era of my life that I like to refer to it, where it's like, what game am I going to play this month, basically. And Resident Evil 4 for Wii kind of came down the pipe at some point on that list, and I got to play it for the first time. And definitely, like, that was a game that was, to me, like, overhyped. And then when I played it, I was like, oh, this is, like, very good, I will say. And there was a lot on that. Like, even at the time, people were saying, like, this is one of the greatest games ever made, 10 out of 10.
Yeah.
Absolutely unforgettable. So, like, I definitely remember I'd never played Resident Evil. I didn't like spooky games. And after, I have this thing so I can kind of experiment with what I play. It's like, all right, let me dive into Resident Evil 4, and reluctantly coming around to, like, really liking it. Because, like, I was a dumb teenager, not for any other more sophisticated reason, I assure you.
Yeah.
So yeah, like, I have, like, certainly a soft spot for this game. It has always been just, like, that goofy thing, and I'll tell you, like, that will definitely, like, filter my opinion of Resident Evil for that era, for sure, of, like, this is my first exposure, and, like, my dude is doing suplexes, and this is what this game is. So then, going on to 5 and then not playing 6, it made a lot of sense. It just felt like a natural escalation. And, like, even at that time, going back and playing, like, the original Resident Evil 1 and turning into a Jill sandwich and stuff, like, it was all goofy to me. So, like, I've really loved them redoing 2 and 3, being able to kind of take it seriously in a way, it being, like, melodrama and, whatever, but, like, it at least having that production and acting that makes it feel serious, if anything, like a B-movie action movie at worst.
Yeah, that's exactly how I look at it, yeah.
So now we've looped back to 4, and yeah, I really didn't know what my expectations were. We talked a lot about it before the game came out, because, like, you would watch a lot of trailers, and I've seen, like, 2 trailers before.
Yeah, you went in pretty dark, yeah.
Yeah, and there was a lot that I hadn't seen yet, and I had forgotten about, for sure. And I am a purist, I will say. I definitely, like, am the person that is like, oh, this isn't like this, or this, I don't like this.
Sure.
Part of, like, my friction with Final Fantasy Remake when I first played it was, like, I see that they're trying to go in a direction, but I don't know how I feel about it. It grew on me, for sure. This was definitely different, though. To me, this is the definitive Resident Evil 4. Fully surpassed the original. I am, like, a person, I feel like a lot of the problems with RE4 do not come up when you kind of get in those conversations of it. Oh, it's the greatest game ever, like, whatever. And I was always someone who's like, well, it's very good, but let me tip my hat and tell you some problems I have with it, for no reason, just, like, it didn't, I came to it later, so of course I didn't necessarily have those rose-tinted glasses. But this remake goes out of its way, I feel, to, like, fix a lot of the things that I had problems with. Like, there are no zombies with guns in this game. Zombies do occasionally use guns, but you're not, like, fighting dudes with assault rifles at the end, which was something that I was very glad to see changed. And like, the whole island part, like, I was kind of dreading it when it was getting to that point in the remake, and it's much better, I think. So much better in this game than it was in the original, and it's much longer. There's a lot more of it. And I was, like, stoked about that, but I was not ready. Like, when you're talking about, like, a game that you would consider a masterpiece, right? Like a 10 out of 10 video game, I think there's always got to be some Michael's secret stuff, some secret sauce type deal that is inserted into the equation that, like, elevates it in a way that is hard to, like, quantify, especially in a review. And for the reviews of games that I've considered to be 10 out of 10s, I have always struggled, I think, with talking about that. Like Breath of the Wild, there's just, like, some magic with exploring in that world that, like, makes it work. And I don't know how to tell you what that is, like, in very specific words, but I definitely feel the same way about Resident Evil 4 Remake. Like, if I were to sit down and review this, I might give it a 10. I'd have to, if I were to settle on a score, it would probably be 10, just because I think it does enough in that column to go above and beyond. And like, I have like no issues with this game, I would say. Like, really trying to rack my brain. Like, there's like one boss fight that I did not enjoy. And y'all know I'm boss fight critiquer of the Resident Evil games for sure. I had a lot of problems with the Resident Evil 2 boss fights because, they're kind of just all the same. Except for one, you have to hit him with a big cargo box, that's neat. Not a good fight, but it's neat.
Not a good fight.
But yeah, so like something in this of like, the things I was thinking about in Resident Evil 4 of like what's iconic, like what has to be there for this to be Resident Evil 4, right?
Yeah.
We gotta be able to suplex guys. You can do that.
Absolutely, number one.
And do the sweep kick for sure. You gotta be able to fight the big lake guy. There's El Gigante, there's Salazar, Lord Sadler. All the classic checkboxes. And it does all those things, but then it adds to that list as well. Now things that it's like, I didn't think I'd sit here and be like, I associate a great parry with Resident Evil 4, but it has a very good parry.
It's there.
Really good boss fights, which I was also surprised by. That there's like a lot of variance, and some of that is like straight pulled from Resident Evil 4, and some of it is like hey, what if we took that one cutscene with QuickTime events in it and made it a whole fight? And it's like, oh yeah, this is awesome. And part of that leans into those new mechanics. And how did they go about doing this? How did they accomplish this? Like in RE4, in that game, if you could move and shoot, that game would be a joke. It would be a cakewalk, right? And they used the restrictions to make it more tense, just like Resident Evil 1 did, just like Resident Evil 2 and 3 did. And in that game, it was like you have to stop to shoot. But there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of things you can do, and you can move and attack and do other things, but you can't shoot. In this, it's like, all right, well, now that we have move and shoot, how are we going to escalate things? It's like, all right, enemies are going to be way more dense. Like you're going to be fighting groups of people in a way that you have not had to before. Groups will be like coming and circling you and cutting off exits. Ashley is going to be more of a part that you have to look after and take care of. It's not a thing that you can hide behind a fucking bush and just not worry about it. And all these things like that are risky, I would say, generally risky to make this game harder and modern. I think they just all succeed on every front. Yeah. Like that village, like play the demo, the chainsaw demo, if you don't believe me. And I know, like, I'm sure some people are like, that village thing is too hard, right? It's like, but like that brutal, like fighting for your life feeling is what made my playthrough of Resident Evil 4 like absolutely 10 out of 10 spectacular.
Yeah.
And we talked about it a little bit when we were playing, but I played on hardcore, you played on standard, and we both played on PlayStation 5, which, generally doesn't come up in reviews because at this point, like PlayStation 5 and Xbox, whatever, you're gonna get pretty much the same performance of the game. But shout out to the PlayStation version of this game because they put a lot of work into the DualSense and how it feels and the adaptive triggers and stuff like that. And I think it really helped like elevate it, just like another layer of immersion, another thing that just is super polished and well made, another like place that they put a lot of work that, you're not going to sit there and think about it a whole bunch, but it helps make that secret sauce that elevates this whole experience, I really think. So yeah, there's plenty of specific things I want to touch on and we'll get into, but general thoughts is like, I really am blown away by how they accomplished this. And yeah, I think it's just a masterfully made game. Like if you had never played Resident Evil 4 before, you could play this and understand why everyone loves it.
Absolutely.
And to be able to, one, just remake a game and have it be good is already a challenge, but to make it as good comparatively as it felt then as it does now, that's like a true achievement, I think. And
Yeah.
and I think they hit that achievement, right?
Yeah. I'd love to be a fly on the wall, like trying to figure out what to cut, what to change, what to modernize, what to kind of maybe keep the same and have it kind of work with the engine, that they have,
Yeah.
the RE engine. That's been great since Resident Evil 7. Um, so yeah, I don't know if there's like a director's commentary or something that they ever put out, or maybe No Clip does something, who knows, but like I would love to just like see how do you elevate a game that, like I said before, so many people consider one of the best games of all time. And the reason why they do that is because at the time there was nothing else like that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that's why they think of it like that way. And like I mentioned already, is we wouldn't have Gears, we wouldn't have Uncharted, we wouldn't have Last of Us, like we wouldn't have a lot of those third-person action games without Resident Evil 4. So like, how do you like respect that legacy, but also like, I don't know, like make it its own new thing, I guess. But like, it's not like you're trying to. I don't know. It didn't feel like they were trying to make a statement. They were just
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, we're gonna make a really, really good third-person action game. That's
Yeah.
like a love letter to the game that's like considered the best third person action game. I don't know. So
And it's funny too, because like a lot of the things that made Resident Evil 4, in my opinion, when I like ended up playing through it multiple times back in the day, made it
yeah,
special was like discovering how much you could do, right? Like
yeah,
you
yeah,
you have this impression of what you can do, right? And that's like I can shoot dudes in the head, I can shoot them in the leg to slow them down, I can shoot things out of their hands, and then you start expounding on that of like, okay, I can shoot him in the head and he's dazed, and now I can run up and kick him, right? Like that's still not a thing that you can do in enough video games. Let me say,
that is true.
like
That's actually very true.
you should be able to do that in way more video games than you can. And it is like a staple of Resident Evil 4. Like, oh, I can shoot this guy in the leg, go up behind him, and fucking suplex him, I guess.
Insta kill.
And get the insta kill, which it's no longer an insta kill, but again, that leads into the credence of it being denser, more of a struggle. You have way more
Yeah,
tools at your disposal, so you have to be more of a threat to them. And all of those things are here again, and they're still great, as it turns out, right? Like nothing has changed except that I can move and shoot, but like shooting a guy in the head to daze him when a whole group is coming up around him and being able to get up to him in time to get the kick off and knock them all back feels really good, just
yeah,
as good as it did, 20 years ago.
yeah. Or like you was mentioning, like them having dynamite that they throw at you, like being able to like get them to drop it or shoot the dynamite in their hand, or like even the chainsaw guys, like he does not care about the other people around him. So like you can use him almost to your advantage to kind of clear groups and stuff like that. I just think there's a lot of like really cool small details in this game where I feel like kind of what you were saying is like why do we not have more kicks
Yeah.
in video games? Like there's a lot of little details in the game where it's like, man, why haven't they like put this in this game or this game? It's like, maybe they've thought about it and maybe there's been some limitations and things like that. I mean, that totally makes sense, but there's just, it's like a lot of it is very reactionary. Everyone
Yeah.
kind of is reactionary to each other, and it's like, yeah, like you're, you know, SOL a lot of the times in the game, but like you can almost use people against each other, which I think is really, really cool.
Yeah.
So
Even
yeah,
even in that first village fight, right? Like being able to lure the chainsaw guy and have him cut down banners that will like cut off passageways, or going into the tower that was like a safe spot in the original game and you fall through it in this game.
yeah,
Which is fun, and they play with your expectations in a lot of fun ways like that. Like there are rooms that are in whole like encounters that are just straight pulled from Resident Evil 4, right? The whole layout of the room, every door, every window that you could go through before is exactly the same, and it's
yeah,
just as compelling because either they just put more enemies in it, or give you new weapons to use, or just all of this kind of freedom that you have with like being able to run up and kick guys, being able to suplex people, being able to use all your tools, being able to parry a guy that's running up on you in order to create an opening to push him back into a crowd. Like all this reactionary stuff makes the flow of combat feel like it can change every time.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it does change
Yeah.
every time, right? Like I've done multiple fights and I've like approached things from different strategies. And part of like I don't necessarily recommend everybody jump out and play it on hardcore mode, right? Like I had a great time. I died a lot. I would say I think we went through it when I was like showing stuff to you. I died like 16 times on one boss fight, right? This one boss that I didn't
Yeah.
like. And that was like maybe the only part where I was not having a great time, but
Yeah.
like the house scene, right? That's a very good example. Happens like I think in chapter 6 in this game, somewhere around there, because it's not the kind of 5 act structure anymore. It's just all chapters. And which I guess it was chapters before, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Numbered chapters through 16. That scene is like super crazy. It is like amped to an 11, and
It's even
especially
crazy on standard. Yeah.
yeah, and I could feel that too. I was like, this is gonna be hard no matter what I'm doing. And I remember that feeling when I played it, the original game. Like a lot of the places that I ended up getting stuck were places that I remember getting stuck when I played it originally, which is funny. But that whole fight, like I kind of approached it several different ways in like the hour that it took me to get through that. And I was having a great time the whole time. Like I kept dying and I kept getting stuck. It's like, oh, you get to the end where like this big bullheaded dude breaks one of the windows and jumps in, which I think it was a chainsaw guy in the original game. So I'd honestly take the bullheaded guys over that. And you get there twice and you still die, and it's like, oh, I got so close. I know I was like right near the end,
Yeah.
but knowing that it's like, okay, I'm gonna try putting the boards on this window. I'm gonna try and filter them all to the stairs. I'm gonna do different things and get different results. That was super fun, and experimenting in that window, draining all of my resources at every turn. It elevated it for sure for me.
Yeah.
Did you feel like you had a lot of ammo and stuff for most things?
There are definitely a couple of conflicts like towards the back half of the game where I was like, man, I'm dry. Like
Yeah.
like I have got to figure it out, and if I die, like I'm gonna have to like go about it a different way or reload a previous save to like try to maybe find some ammunition or trade some things in to get some crafting stuff to make ammo and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean there was definitely a couple of instances where I was running out of ammo, and one of them actually was at that house fight.
Yeah.
That's about halfway through the game, or close to halfway through the game, and it's like even on standard mode, I was like, man, this is. I think I had to do it like maybe 3 or 4 times. But yeah, I had like no complaints because like, oh, this is super fun to play.
Yes.
Two, it's like there's different strategies I can do here. I can use dudes against each other. They still have dynamite. I have hand grenades. I have flash grenades. Get them to like burst out of their head and just float. Throw the flash grenade just to take out like 2 or 3 of them at the same time. Things like that. I mean, there's a lot of cool like little strategies that you can do. Even when your back is up against the wall. And then like I think this is a really cool thing, but like making Lewis like
A character.
give you a character, still quote unquote ladies man, but he will throw you he'll throw you ammo. Like I thought that was really cool. Like I especially in moments where you're like, man, I'm running out of ammo really really fast here. So he'll throw you some ammo. He fights too. I felt like he was pretty helpful in some of those fights and kind of like pulling aggro off of me to pull it towards him so I can kind of either set someone up for a kick or whatever and kind of clear the area, like that kind of stuff. So yeah, I mean, like I said, there's definitely a couple fights where I felt like this is pretty difficult, in terms of like trying to conserve ammunition and like also make sure you're using it to the right, the right degree.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool how, and there's boxes and stuff, and those are all RNG. So like depending on a run, it can maybe be a little bit more giving to your resources, which is nice. So if you're struggling at a kind of stopgap, it'll clearly like give you more healing items and things like that.
Yeah.
to kind of get over the hump of it. But yeah, just that kind of breakneck feeling, I really think doesn't let up until the end of the game, right? Like it just
Yeah,
goes.
it really does.
Especially like going back and replaying it, just playing through the game. It took me I think 11 hours to beat it the second time around. It's just no cutscenes, just going through. I think it took me like 24 hours to beat it the first run.
Yeah, mine was 22.
Yeah,
Yeah.
somewhere around there, which feels right, But there's definitely a lot of game here. I'll say it was very nice. Like, this is much bigger than any of the Resident Evil remakes before it. It's much bigger than Resident Evil 8, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which was, I would say, the biggest one outside of 4 before this. And it feels, it's kind of like an action thriller to some extent. It is just go until the end. And then there's like one section where you get to play as Ashley, which is great. And that's like my little break for me. But outside of that, yeah, just breakneck, nonstop fighting, going to the end, with all of the things that you would expect to be there, right? Like in my head, I don't necessarily have a checklist I'm going through, but it's like, all right, here's the lake guy, here's the big Abraham Lincoln dude with the crazy eye, who's got big spider ribs. Here's Salazar in the castle, and Ashley gets taken away. But they also subvert that with some new things. Like here's a section where you get to play as Ashley, which is really great. Here is like more Lewis backstory. Here is another section with Lewis, more than just like the house section.
Yeah.
And here is another late game section with Leon and Ashley that I don't think was in the original, where you kind of get back into it even at the end of the game, as a team, squad up. And I think all of the surprises that they lay out for you are really great. And I think everything that they flesh out in the story and the world are really great. Like,
Yeah.
It's like, hey, Las Plagas, it's a thing. I do remember them mentioning that they dug it up in the original game, but I don't think they spent nearly as much time on like where in the castle and like where the amber. Resident Evil 4 is just Jurassic Park. Just if you were curious out there, it is just Jurassic Park.
Kind of is.
But in a good way. It's all thumbs up for me. But they definitely spend more time of like, here's where they found Las Plagas. Here is like the amber and where it comes from. Here is like who is Ada working for. That's not just like a completely dead thread that is just like outside of the Ada story that you would play kind of separately. Which I don't. When did they add the Ada storyline to Resident Evil 4? Was that like the PS2 re-release or something like that?
Yeah, it was something like that. Like it wasn't. I can't remember when they would have done that.
Yeah.
It feels like once it was more so just being on GameCube, that's when they started adding that extra stuff, like the Ada's like separate ways or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Or Ada file or file Ada or whatever it's called. I can't remember.
I always think it's like episode Ada. I don't think that's right, but
Yeah, or something
that
like
sounds cool. But yeah, I just think that everything feels more cohesive and in itself, not even just like connected to Resident Evil 2, but it was cool. Like, this feels like the same Leon from Resident Evil 2.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it feels like his story continued versus like Resident Evil 4 kind of coming from the PlayStation 1 days. It's like, here's this whole new character basically who's just like a weird, kind of arrogant, cocky dude that makes jokes all the time.
Yeah. Are we sure this is the same guy from like 2 games ago? Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I'm not
first day
getting
on the
those
job
vibes.
guy.
Yeah.
Here it's like, he's a bit of, he makes plenty of jokes. They're all great. But
Amazing.
like he has like that kind of kindness that Leon from RE2 Remake has.
Yeah.
He has that kind of like hero's instinct, but he's also clearly like haunted by that to some extent, and he plays it off by being funny. And
Yeah.
I think you put it really well. I think in the viewpoints of just like he's kind of making the jokes to get through it.
I almost think he's actually scared shitless, to be honest with you.
For sure.
Like, you this guy goes from being a rookie cop that shows up on his first day, and it's just like all hell broke loose. This like Midwestern city is just SOL. Like, he has to get through all of that, somehow manages to get through all of that. And then it's just like somehow the president, I guess, got wind of that and was just like, I gotta secret agent this guy up, like, and going through Operation Javier with Krauser, and just like, man, 6 years really flies by, and now he's just like, he's essentially this Terminator. But it's almost like funny to me because like they make his character damaged from having already experienced a previous event that's like was just as messed up as like what he's about to go through. And well, like, I think he finally realizes this is this is big time, like pretty early on in the game,
Yeah.
especially with he kicks a dude against the wall and the dude gets back up and he's like, what the fuck? It's just like it's like it's happening all over again. So like I appreciate the macho mentality, but I also appreciate, in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, this guy is scared shitless, and like he's saying these one-liners and trying to play up the whole secret agent bit just to get through it, and
Yeah.
and I kind of like thinking of it that way, just because of the experience that he's already previously had. And just, I don't know, it's just funny to it's like John McClane, right? Like from
Yes.
Die Hard. It's like wrong place, wrong time, but it's the right guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's just, I'm sure that's kind of probably how they modeled Leon a little bit back in the day. Is like, let's think of a character that's just kind of like an everyday guy, was not supposed to be there. John McClane, like, let's make a Resident Evil character out of him. But he's very, it seems like in this version of the game, he's way more John McClane, I would say,
Yeah.
in terms of like, he's already done it and he's already gone through it, and so like now he's just throwing out quips, uh, and they're really really good.
Yeah.
I don't want to spoil any of them
Yeah,
because
for sure. Especially
I
like
just
toward the end of the game,
yeah.
there's just some absolute club bangers.
Okay, there is the one though. I will say it, the Nighty Night Nights.
Yeah.
I literally put my controller down and I was like, man, like, you better be grateful you ain't getting no signal from Hunnigan right now. Like, she'd probably be like, mission over. Like,
You need to
my
get back.
dude. Yeah.
You're done.
Like, I was like, man, who is writing your material? But I love, like, even like how cringy that is. It works so well in that moment in the battle that you just had against those characters.
Yeah.
And then
His delivery is
for
also
him,
great.
yeah, the delivery is it's perfect. It's like, yeah, this is exactly what Resident Evil is like.
Yeah,
So,
it's kind of like, and I really like it. His interactions with Ashley, I think, are super great, and Ashley is very good. I will say,
yeah,
like, especially like having played through a couple times, like, I love she feels like the only normal person in the whole game. But I like that because like Leon is supposed to be like her superhero, and he's a super cop going around like killing dudes, like
yeah,
absolutely suplexing left and right. And then he's like next, and going on from target to target, and Ashley's
yeah,
just like not is freaking out the whole time.
yeah. She is breathing, man.
She's breathing heavy. Somebody get this girl an inhaler.
Yeah,
But I like the progression of like she doesn't really know Leon to the beginning, so just doesn't really trust him. Doesn't like necessarily following his orders, but is willing to do it. He kind of proves himself, and then they're friends, and then like they trust each other more and more to the point like toward the end of the game, if like he gets hurt after a fight, she's like, Leon, and he's like, I'm sorry, I wasn't paying attention, like stuff like that. There's like little quips and
yeah,
stuff back and forth. I really really like. It's subtle. It's well done. I was kind of worried going into this that it was going to be like they were going to go for like a Last of Us situation where everyone's kind of chatting and it's very chatty and we're doing a lot of character development stuff. They don't do
yeah,
that.
yeah,
They use restraint in a really good way of like, this is a tense situation. This isn't like something that we're just going to be like having a casual talk about tea. But there will be breaks in everything where
yep,
we can have conversations that make sense to have.
yeah. And I feel like a lot of that is specifically tied to the cutscenes between them.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of those cutscenes are kind of like a breather, like a moment before they jump into like another conflict, or maybe a transition to like a different location. So I really like Ashley a lot too.
Yeah.
I I'm really grateful that they didn't have her hit on him. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, like there's flirting there, but
Yeah.
I like
She thinks he's Superman
I'm
for
like
sure.
yeah, I would like flirt with this guy too a little bit. Like this dude just like came out of nowhere and like saved my ass, and now he's like RoboCop, and just like I'm the mission, I'm Baby Eagle, like yeah, I mean hell yeah, this beefcake of a man, like but like it's not like I know that there's gonna be the Resident Evil 4 like OG purists that are like, man, she doesn't make that pass on him like at the very end of the game, and it's like, yeah, but like that was awkward as is
Yeah, it
already.
was
So it's
bad.
like it's just very nice for her to like appreciate him instead of like making a pass at him. Like, oh, like maybe I'll become like a special agent like you. It's like it's cute. It's corny, but it works really well in the situation. And I think whoever the actress was who played her in this game did a really, really good job at just like playing a character that doesn't need to be like overly sexualized, but like you care about her. Like, I don't know, it's like hard to she's not Ellie, you know what I mean? Like she's not Ellie from The Last of Us. It's not like that deep characterization, but like you still care about her well-being because she's a kid.
Yeah.
she's like in college, and like it's not like she chose to be the president's daughter, and like all of a sudden she gets kidnapped, and it's just like what the hell's going on. So it's like you feel for her, but then you also care about her at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think they did a really, really good job at like balancing those emotions that you have towards that character.
Yeah, she's charming, is what I'd say,
She's
right?
very, very charming. Yeah.
In again that kind of way of like she's like the straight man of all of the characters, right? She's like a completely normal person, truly doesn't any
Hasn't done it at all. That there's no previous game that she's gone through. She's just a kid.
Yeah, and she seems like she's like out of the way for most of your fights. She stays behind Leon, right? She like
Encourages Leon,
encourages him. She
which is
doesn't.
cute.
Yeah. And like keep in mind when we say like flirting, right? The most I think that happens is like when you catch her from like a drop or something, she'll say like my hero, and like that's it.
Yeah. But
That,
it's like it's almost like a brotherly love in a way, but it's like it is subtle flirting, but I don't know, it just works really well where it's not like,
yeah.
oh, my hero. Oh, like she's not like,
It feels very natural to the
fantasizing
situation,
about him. Yeah.
which
It's
is
like,
crazy. Like
yeah.
one of those things of like kind of like you said before, like I really don't know how they pulled it off. Of like it's so campy in the original game, and here it's so charming. It's just nice. It's like the one nice thing that's happening. Is
Exactly.
Like,
yeah, that's like pretty much like the best way to explain it. It's like she is the light in the whole situation of like this is not great.
yeah, of just like
So,
a person grateful that you're here, and they play around with it, like with her and Leon both getting like infected at some point in the story, right? Like obviously a big part of the original, big part here. I would say even bigger part here, and that like causes divides between the two of them, and then brings them back together in great ways. That allows for like some kind of friendship to develop between the two of them. But I also like how Leon is written toward her of like he's always like very much laser focused on her well-being. Like even when she's like, "Hey, thanks for saving me," he's like, "Well, let's get you out of here first." I'm not counting my ducks before they hatch.
we're not quite done yet, but
Yeah, he's like, I got like 20 more dudes I got to kill still.
no prob, no prob. Like maybe he says it back to her, like she says no prob, like, and her dialogue is very
Early
2005.
aughts. Yeah, it's very good. Like,
Yeah,
okay, no prob.
Yeah. Skills.
Yes.
Do you have subtitles on?
I heard the skills thing, which was
Oh,
so
it's
funny.
like,
I laughed really good at that.
It's still my heart, Ashley.
But yeah, like
I don't know. Yeah.
It's fun too because like I think the dynamic of her being like, hey, maybe I can be a secret agent too, because she's like helping him solve puzzles and whatnot is cool. I think that's like a a totally natural thing of like, hey, we're partners. Like, let's play this like a team, so we look out for each other.
Yeah.
And yeah, like all the way through the end of Ashley's like trust in Leon growing very naturally as the game progresses. Like that relationship is super satisfying and well done and not weird. Like that was I just really wanted it to not be weird, and it's not weird at all. Like Leon does not flirt with Ashley at all. He's like he's like,
I think he just wants to get home. Like
he's like, I don't even know you, lady, but
it's like,
but like
two dudes drove me out here. Like they got like pretty early, but I'm just here. I just want to get home.
Yeah, and no one's like joking. There's no jokes about it being like a weird situation between the two of them, which I appreciate. Yeah. It's not played off as a joke, which I would say goes for the whole game. Like, while Leon is making jokes and like doing what he needs to get through it, generally the whole game is much more serious, I would say. In the same way that like Resident Evil 2 and 3 are. Of like, ridiculous stuff happens, and sometimes like Jill is gonna make a great joke in Resident Evil 3 about it. Bitch can't even swim.
I always forget about that one, but man, when that hit, I was like, yeah, hell yeah, like
yeah, absolutely.
Here we go, let's go.
So everything generally is done played a little bit more seriously. Even like Salazar, who's like this kid kind of enemy, is played up as more of a serious villain, and I like that. I think like the tonal shift made it more spooky for sure, and this like feels truer to Resident Evil tone wise, in that like it has some camp, it has some fun, it has some jokes, but it's scary, man. Like it is a thriller experience, especially like when regenerators show up later in the game. The way the lighting across the board is in this game, which is incredible. Even when you go back through the village at night, like in chapter 3 or whatever, it is like it adds this whole new kind of oppressive atmosphere to it that I thought was so good.
Yeah, it's almost like because we talked about Village a couple of years ago, but it's almost like the original Resident Evil 4 was kind of like the bare bones blueprint for Resident Evil Village.
Mm-hmm.
And then that game, I think Resident Evil Village is like, it's scary,
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if it's scarier than 7 for me, but I think Resident Evil Village is pretty scary. But it honestly holds its influences on its sleeve pretty well, which is the campiness, I guess, of the original Resident Evil 4. And so for them to remake Resident Evil 4, it almost felt like they took a little bit of that magic that they found with Resident Evil Village and put it in here. It's not fully there in terms of like how scary that game is. I think Resident Evil Village is scarier than Resident Evil 4 Remake, but I also they're pretty different games, like Resident Evil 4, like you're moving pretty quickly, where Resident Evil 8 is like you're kind of taking your time, figuring things out, and all of that. But
and Resident Evil 4 wants you to be tense more than it wants you to be afraid, right?
Exactly, yeah, because there's just so much going on. Versus like Village is like, it gives you the moments to be afraid because of Lady D or any other villain or area in that game. But like, kind of going back to what I was saying is like it's pulling, like having like separate villains, and everyone is kind of like their own area, and it's not open, I guess you could say, like the way Village was. How like you had like that hub area, and then you're going to like the different houses and the different areas, and you come back to the hub area. I mean, there is backtracking in this game, but it moves in sections. You have the village, you have the castle, then you have the island.
Yep.
So it's like those are all very like cut off from each other. Once you finally get there, but
which is
I don't
like,
know, I just
it's cool. I like that. I love like the level design of this game for sure. I appreciate that, like, while it isn't open, it's wider, right? And there is like avenues to do other stuff while either between major story beats, and then like generally, save for the village, right? Really, like, there's no point where it's like, okay, now if you want to go get stuff, you can.
Yeah.
Um, it like there's like a point in the castle where it's like, okay, now you kind of have your freedom to go get stuff, and there's a point in the island like of the middle section, maybe not the very beginning, but it's like, okay, now you can kind of backtrack and get anything that you might have
Yep.
missed. And the merchant is always good at reminding you of like, hey, like this is that point where you want to kind of check your boxes if you haven't yet.
Yep.
Yeah, I will say, like, thinking about it in comparison to Village, I like this game a lot more than Village.
Yeah.
And I liked Village a lot at the time. I will say, because not that they're similar, right? But they are doing similar things.
That's pretty much what I was trying to get at. Yeah.
Um, it is a bummer. Like, this game, in my opinion, is like much better than Resident Evil Village. And it kind of overshadows that game in a
Sure.
significant way. In a way of like Resident Evil Village, when it came out, it was trying to get out from under the shadow of Resident Evil 4 and 7. And now 4 is out again. It's kind of like hard to say, like, oh, you should play Village and not 4. It's like, no, you should play Resident Evil 4. Like, it's doing everything that game did and doing it better generally.
Yeah.
And
It's still an experience, though. I think a lot of people,
yeah,
especially if they were attached to what they did in 7,
yeah, it's worth playing.
and that whole perspective change and all of that, I think it's definitely worth playing. But I understand what you're saying in terms of
Yeah,
like,
it's like
yeah.
so much better to me, and they cover similar, things, not necessarily like exact moments, but like
Yeah.
the castle, like those kinds of
Yep.
things, right? Like
The characters.
the village, right?
Yeah.
The destination, and Resident Evil 8 has that like weird family dynamic that I didn't love, like them doing a second time over. And
Yeah.
Resident Evil 4 does not have any of that.
No.
It is like totally its own thing, tone wise, with the villains. And as someone who like did not like the villains of Resident Evil 4 before, like it is weird to like them now. But they're very imposing, right? Like even just
Yeah.
the village chief, I forget his name, Alonzo or whatever, Mendez.
Yeah. Yep.
He is like, he only shows up like the 3 times that he shows up, right? It hasn't changed, but like he makes so much more of an impact, I think, in those moments.
Yeah.
And feels like more of a villain for the village, and then moving on to Salazar in the castle, and then to Sadler at the end. But like part of that is also the boss fights are much better and more dynamic, and just like everything else, right? You have the knife, you can do all these things, you can run away, you can press circle to evade. You have all of that freedom in those fights that you do in the rest of the game that makes them wider and more interesting.
Yeah.
How'd you feel about Ada?
Well, first off, I want to start off by saying this.
Yeah.
I do not like that people are going after
The actress.
the actress
Yeah.
for her performance. I guess I can understand maybe some criticism about it, but just don't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I hate that stuff so
that's
much. And
good call out. Absolutely.
and it's not the same actress from Resident Evil Remake 2. It's a completely different voice actress. It's actually the actress that played Ada in the latest Resident Evil movie.
Oh, really? Cool.
So it's literally the same actress as the actress that played Ada in the recent, what is it, Welcome to Raccoon City movie that came out like a couple years ago or a year ago.
Lily Gao.
Yep, Lily Gao. I was like, I think her last name's Gao, but I don't remember her first name. But yeah, I mean, completely different performance.
Yeah.
Than the second game remake. But like, I think my biggest critique I have is that she's not in the game enough.
Yeah. I was kind of
which
like thinking there would be a part where you would play as Ada at a point,
Yeah.
honestly.
Kind of like what they did in RE2 remake, where you have that section with her. She has like a little gun that can like solve the puzzle for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, aside from that, that critique is just her not being in the game enough. I enjoy her. It's Ada, like
Yeah.
like she's the one character that's always playing two sides of the same coin.
Yeah.
And it's more of like a moral kind of back and forth with herself, because she sees Leon as the good side of everything. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I can't tell if the romantic, stuff that happened in RE2 carries over to this game. And honestly, I don't really care for that.
Yeah.
I didn't really care for it in the second game that much either. When they kissed on the tram, I was like, all right, well, met him like 5 hours ago,
Yeah,
but
that was random,
whatever.
but okay.
But like I guess, when you think about it, who she is and like what her role is, and who she's working for and all that stuff, like, yeah, she's gonna kiss a dude because dudes are weak,
Yeah,
for
she's manipulating the situation to like get through it.
exactly. But I also think that there's like a deep down connection to Leon where she's like, oh, he is like legitimately a good person,
Yeah.
and he actually like cares about the whole situation. I think he does care about her still, in the game. I think it's pretty apparent, but like he's also very guarded because of what happened in the second game. And I like kind of the progression there in terms
Yeah.
of their connection together. But yeah, I just felt like I didn't get enough of her. And like I know that there's discussion of like a DLC that's coming out. um I think it's called Separate Ways or whatever. I think it got like data mined or whatever, like a month ago. um so yeah, I mean, I want to see more of her. Ada's always, like I said, she's like that character that's like, I don't know, there's an interesting backstory there. I always feel like we never get a lot of,
Yeah.
just because of, I mean, how she's, kind of set up to be. But
Sure. And
yeah, I
it's
mean,
certain Resident Evil 6 certainly did not help that.
yeah, exactly. Like, if they remake Resident Evil 6, like I want like a dedicated Ada. Like if you're gonna do like 3 campaigns again, Lord, I don't know if that's the right way. I don't know if that's the right way to go. But like if they do something like that, and it's, not as long and convoluted as the sixth game, and they give Ada her time to shine, like, yeah, I hope like she gets like her spotlight. You know what I mean? Because like
Yeah.
I just feel like she just does not get a lot of it, in this game. She definitely gets more of it in the second game than she does in this game. So.
Yeah. You get to play as her and everything.
Yep.
Yeah, I was definitely kind of waiting for a moment where we would get more Ada. Like I was like so ready for it to cut to her perspective on certain things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is fine. I'm like okay that it didn't, because I think the Leon and Ashley thing it makes that more of like a straight line, works better.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely wanted more Ada. I think what you get of her is great though, and it is cool because it feels like a continuation of what was there in Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
Narratively, different chemistry, and I appreciate that Lily Gao is like absolutely doing her own thing with Ada Wong. Kind of plays her a little bit differently than this kind of hammed up, I can do anything. Like I'm so sick of this shit, which is kind of how she is in
Yeah.
RE2.
But she still has the femme fatale.
Yeah,
Like, but it's just not like, it's just not as cartoony as what you have gotten before.
she's more stoic, right? Like she kind of keeps to herself a bit more. She's more guarded, honestly, herself. And you can, and Leon can tell that she's just a bullshitter bullshitting at this point. So that makes their moments together really fun. But it definitely felt like, I would say, like talking about it now and kind of thinking about it, it feels like the part 2 of a 3-part story. Like I'd be really curious to see like the other shoe drop and Ada come around to Leon's side. Like it feels like they are almost setting that up here.
Yeah.
And I would love to see us get there. Like a Leon and Ada co-op type thing could be really cool.
Yeah, that actually would be really cool. Yeah.
And I would love to see like that relationship come to a conclusion. Not necessarily like them together or anything like that, but just like him kind of bringing her back to the good side of things instead of the mercenary side of things. And I would say the same with Luis. I think they did a great job with him, and you get a little bit more time with him, and you get to spend more time with him. He gets more development, and his presence is felt through to the end of the game, even if he's not necessarily there for it, right? Like,
yeah.
And I really appreciate that. It made him feel like a full character that had decisions and choices and made a choice to kind of go against this situation.
Yeah, and like, now that you like mentioned that, I thought it was really cool to kind of have Leon and Ashley consistently reference him.
Yeah.
You know, like, like, oh yeah, didn't Luis say this, or like, whatever, yeah, and kind of referencing him even on the back half of the game, and them kind of like doing it for him almost, like recognizing that he is the reason why they've gotten this far,
Yeah.
essentially.
Totally.
And I think it's cool that it's not like they're rewriting the script here or anything like that. A character that's done something nefarious in the past and they're trying to make up for it. And he's Leon's like, well, why are you helping us, or why are you helping me, or whatever, and he's like, oh, I just want to clear my conscience, and I've done bad things or whatever, and they like expand upon the things that he's done, but also like it's just another instance where Umbrella has taken someone's like dream and kind of like convoluted it towards,
Yeah.
like it's the same thing that happens in Jurassic Park. It's just like there's this cool dream, but then there's like these rich dudes that are also, they always want to profit from it, and they prey on people that have like huge aspirations to do good. And that's what Luis, that's what he was doing. Like that's what he thought he was doing. And then everything happened with Raccoon City, and like him kind of figuring out like, oh, I'm literally the reason why a lot of this has happened, and like him trying to like make up for it, I thought was a really cool way to kind of give him more depth this time around in the game. But then, like I mentioned before, like he's still felt there throughout the game, like even towards the end of the game too. So
Yeah. Totally. I really like that. I think it's like, you can have a character that's like impactful in different ways, and
yep.
and I think that works, especially for a character so beloved by the fan base, right? Like everyone loves Luis, like in
Yeah.
OG RE4, and so have him fleshed out in a way that does not like take away from anything that he was, but just makes it better today. It's really good.
Yeah. Did you ever, really quick here, did you ever watch G4 TV back in the day?
Yeah.
Like X Play, Electronic Playground. I
Cheat
this
was the
I
reason like that I wanted to play Resident Evil 4 because of all the secrets that they showed in that show.
Yeah. I remember that show too. But I can't remember if it was Electric Playground or I don't think it was Attack of the Show, but I always remember seeing Luis, them using like that bit where he's like, it's game time.
Oh
Like,
yeah, yeah.
and I can't remember if it's like right before they cut to the show, they always had like little clips of like games, but then they always ended it with Luis saying it's game time. And when he says it in this game, I'm like, hell yeah, like let's go. Like that's the start of the fight where you're in the house, and it's like, yeah, it is game time, because it's literally you're doing everything the game has so far thrown at you all in one moment. You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, it's game time. So like I'm really glad that they kept that line and kind of like expanded on it too this time around.
Yeah, that's a good call out. I totally forgot about that like intro montage. I think it was for.
I can't remember.
It was either Attack of the Show or X Play. I feel
it might have been X Play. Yeah,
because they definitely referenced RE4 a lot on X Play, because that was like a 5 out of 5 for them. Yeah. Any other things that we want to mention before maybe we move on? Talk a little bit about spoilers and then get out of here. The shooting games are really fun. The
shooting range is awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun, stylish. Love pirate theme.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I love the merchant just overall. I think he's great.
Absolutely. Very chatty this time around. Gun runs with fun. Love that line. I appreciate, I know, I don't know if people think it's lazy or not, but like, I love it when there's like kind of like a stationary secondary character in video games that's like, hey, just a heads up, before you go here, do this thing first, because you ain't coming back. And I don't know if people think that's lazy or not, but I always personally appreciate that in video games, because there's definitely going to be something I've missed along the way. And I'm one of those people that looks in every nook and cranny. Like I'm that guy. That's probably why it took me 22 hours to beat this game the first time around.
Hey, same.
So I'm like, I love the merchant doing that. And yeah, I'm just trying to think of like other little things that I really
I think the
Yeah.
side quests are great, right? You
Side quests are great. Yeah.
basically other things to do instead of just
Yep.
shooting blue medals. Like there's like little thing like go kill this fish or go get a
Yeah.
golden egg from a chicken.
And I never felt like those side missions took forever to do.
Yeah.
And it was a lot of the times when I was doing those side missions, I'd run across resources that I had missed previously. So I'm like, oh, this is perfect. Like, it's kind of making sure that yeah, you can get spinels if you turn in the side mission, but like I'm also making sure that I'm clearing everything out because, like
Yeah.
we mentioned before, like there are some times in this game where resources are pretty bleak, and so being able to kind of grab everything is really, really nice. I was gonna say this, I like that they made the charms for the attaché case kind of be not just cosmetic this time around. It's
Yeah.
almost like little buffs,
Yeah.
which I think is a really, really cool idea. Like I got a buff like right off the bat. Like the first time I got like 3 gold coins, I got a buff that was make Leon like run 8% faster or whatever. So
Whoa.
like that one I think is really, really helpful at certain parts in this game where it's just like if you get crowded, I can just run away real quick and then
Yeah, that's
kind of
cool.
circle back. But like I think that the shooting range is just so much fun. S ranking those are going to be really, really difficult. I got a couple of S ranks. I think you did too.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, there's just so much to eat in this game.
Yeah. It's so dense, right? Like
Yeah.
you're going to want to play it multiple times because it's just like fun to play and
Yeah.
like you're going to want to level up your gun because every gun has like a special super upgrade that you can get if you upgrade all the other things. And I love stuff like that. Especially things that like kind of change how the weapon works. Like for the starter pistol, it's like now you have like a 5 times crit rate. So you're just like popping heads all the
Yeah.
time, and it's awesome. Or like with the barrel loaded shotgun, it's like double the ammo capacity. It's like, all right, I guess I have 50 shotgun shells loaded in here.
Yeah.
Just shoot forever. Like I just think that stuff is so fun.
Yeah.
Even like one of the SMGs is like shoot through 5 enemies at a time, and it's like, okay, this is like my crowd control weapon now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Um,
And don't sleep on the bolt thrower. Like,
yeah, especially with
I
those
personally,
mines.
yeah. Yep, I think that's a really helpful gun.
Yeah,
But yeah, I was gonna say really quick before we move on is I also appreciate, there are there's a lot of weapons in this game.
yeah,
Like I think at least 20 weapons, 20 different types of weapons that you can kind of use, or 20 weapons that you can kind of play with and stuff like that. But I appreciated the game letting me choose which guns that I felt like I didn't feel like there was one gun in this game that was just completely useless.
yeah,
Um,
totally.
which I think is really good. But it's almost like there's other sections in the game where it's like you can use your previous like older weapon that you got early on in the game or upgrade it for something new and kind of build on that with the resources that you get moving forward. And because I didn't feel like I was upgrading every single gun to be its like highest tier. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
I felt like I had to really kind of pick and choose what I wanted to invest in terms of, okay, do I want to use this gun for crowd control? I still have the bolt thrower, but like, do I want to make it more powerful, like reload faster, like things like that, or change out my first pistol to like this other pistol that might be just slightly better. Like there's a lot of pick and choose when it comes to like weapons in this game, and I appreciate the game not being like, here's 200,000 pesetas and you can just upgrade all of your guns to be 100%. You know what I mean? It's like you
yeah.
really have to pick and choose which guns you want to invest in, and I think that's really, really cool.
And in more so than any of the Resident Evils that have had like the multiple tier of like here's the better shotgun. Like it didn't
Yeah.
feel like getting the third shotgun, like the barrel loading one, I needed to because like the enemies were
Yeah.
too chunky, right? It's like you could use the shotgun from the beginning of the game through to the end of the game, especially if you upgraded it, because it's not like about just like you get another one that's just better in every way, right? It's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, this one will penetrate armor. It's like, okay, well, this pistol doesn't take as much room in your inventory, so maybe you could carry 2 of them around.
There you
Or
go.
like
Yep.
the Red 9, which was like my favorite pistol, is like way more unwieldy. You know, you have to have the stock with it if you want it to be stable, but it does a lot of damage. So it's like, do you just want
Yeah.
raw damage? You can go for that. Or maybe the other one that's like cool, will shoot through armor, or like the wood shields that they use and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I really like that. And you can compare the guns in the shop as well, which is really nice.
Which is awesome. Yep.
I like that it's more like, okay, maybe this rifle is going to be better for certain kinds of players, and maybe this SMG is going to be better. You know, like the M16 like assault rifle you get at some point, it uses rifle ammo as opposed to having its kind of own auto rifle ammo that it pulls from as a resource. So it's like, okay, well, this is going to be eating your rifle ammo. So if you want something that can do a lot of damage to a lot of people really quickly, or is like a single shot, it's like, okay, make your rifle choice. It made those things way more interesting to go through, and especially playing through it again, it's like, oh yeah, like these are both very useful. It's just like stylistically and how I want to deal with different fights. You know, I'm going to use them very differently.
Yep.
And that's awesome. Long time coming for Resident Evil, I think, because it's always like, all right, you got to the chapter 3, so get the new shotgun and sell your old one. I appreciate that you can kind of just invest in what you want.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think we're going to talk a little bit about spoilers here. I'll put some timestamps in the description down below if you want to just hear the outro or anything. But generally, I think you can tell we both like it. If you like Resident Evil, you're probably already playing this game. If you're, on the fence about it, I can tell you don't have to be worried. Even the purist in me that's like, maybe this one thing wasn't in there or whatever, I came away loving this more than the original, on top of the original, right? Like, I would not love this game as much as I do if I didn't love the original, but I do love it more than the original because it just took everything that game did and made it better just about every other way. But putting our spoiler hats on, I will say this was a thing that I realized was not in the game that I expected to be in the game. That on my second playthrough, I was like, oh shit, there was no laser wall. there was no like Leon doing like a backflip over a wall of lasers in the hallway.
A Matrix backflip, because that's why they did it, because Matrix was like this huge thing late 99
for sure,
early 2000s.
Yeah,
so
they were just leaning into the times. There's also no boulder that you have to run from, which is an objectively good thing. I'm gonna let everyone know it's a good thing.
It is a good thing. There's no cars or the truck section anymore, where you're like running away from the trucks or trying to shoot the people on the trucks. It's like right before you get to the castle.
Yeah. Okay.
But there is a call out to the trucks. Like once you get to the castle, there's like a broken down truck right there at the entrance.
Oh, that's cool.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
And the minecart section is way more Donkey Kong this time around.
Absolutely. I mean,
you very good. I love that.
Put that music. Put the Donkey Kong cart, minecart music to that. I think Kyle Hilliard from Game Informer MidMax, he actually made a video of like him taking the music from the Donkey Kong and putting it onto the minecart section of this game, which I thought was pretty funny. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing. I know that I've seen some purists. I purposely went and tried to find some on YouTube. And it's not like I fed into their, weird criticisms of this game, calling it quote unquote woke and things like that. I thought it was funny. I couldn't tell if they were playing into it, into the joke or whatever, but I was just like, there's literally nothing in this game that's been cut that like really matters.
Yeah.
There was an argument that I saw online. They were like, where's the throne room? I'm like, it's still there. Like, I can still sit in this throne and still do this goofy ass pose.
Yeah, the Devil May Cry pose, right? Like,
yeah, it's like, it's definitely still there. It's just like you kind of gotta backtrack and look for it real quick. But yeah, I mean, I know that a lot of people are like pissed off about the U3 fight not being in there anymore.
U3 fight?
It's like the caterpillar looking dude. You should look that up.
Oh man.
It's hard for me to explain it. Yeah, look that up. The U3 fight, it's like a boss fight. I think that's like towards the end of the castle, or maybe it's on the island. I can't remember. But I know that boss fight was cut, and then the Salazar statue, right? Is that cut too?
The Salazar statue. Oh fuck, dude! I legitimately, I'm watching this right now. Completely forgot about this. Totally
Yeah.
fine with it not being there. The thing
See,
that
like right there, like you're just, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about this, because it's like it doesn't even matter.
the thing that like I had forgotten about, because it was more of like everything was kind of coming back to me in waves, that I was like so stoked was still in the game, was like the guy in the basement of the castle, his like
Yep.
lieutenant guy that you freeze with the ice and stuff.
The
And-
Verdugo. Yep.
Yeah, and that's still awesome. Like it's basically the exact same.
I texted you and I was like, I literally just played the scariest fucking like RE moment. Like it was like 2 in the morning. It was like 2 in the morning, and I was
being
like
terrified of it.
bro, because like you just enter that section and it just cuts away really quickly, and I'm like, oh fuck, I've completely forgot about this, and I
had the
was
same thought.
terrified. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wait, what is it? What's going on? Why is this like? Why is my screen all red all of a sudden? And like, why are we moving really fast? And why is the music getting really tense? And I was like, oh no, like I like remembered in that moment like what this was, and yeah, that is just. I think for me it was just the like that's a really good section to kind of talk about like tension. Like there's you're like, oh, what are these switches on the wall for? What are this, like, oh, this is like liquid nitrogen. Oh, that's right, like this guy. All right, cool. And just I don't know, the soundtrack in that moment was just like amplified to 11, and I was like, that's why I'm like scared out of my mind right now, is because I'm playing this with headphones on, and this thing is, doing the whole alien, in the
air vents,
yeah, in the air vents bit, like they usually do. So it's just like, oh my god. And I actually didn't even end up killing him. I didn't know you could kill him.
Yeah. I didn't. I was unable to kill him until my second playthrough. I tried.
Okay.
I tried really hard.
Okay.
I used every bullet I had, and I was so upset with myself afterwards. I'll tell you what.
Yeah, I waited for that. I played, merry-go-round with him for a little bit and waited for the elevator to come, and I was like, oh, it's here. I just booked it towards the elevator, and he's just bum rushing me as the doors close, and I'm like, see ya, like.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I love that fight, and it was like one of those things of like, oh man, like this is so different than the other stuff. I don't remember the original Salazar fight. I know that this one was different. He was like on a big thing. He was stationary. I feel like I remember. The Salazar fight, now that we're in spoilers territory, was the one that I got stuck on. I died like 10 times on that fight. Not a super in love with that fight, but I also like appreciate that, you have some breadth of movement that you can kind of get away from stuff. It was just like he has like 2 attacks where he like sprays ink at you like straight up, or he sprays it side to side, and I like could not dodge either of them for the life of me.
Yeah.
And like the environment is made for him to kind of catch you with those attacks, like on the stairs or going left or right. Later, like when I played through it a second time, I was like, oh, you can just jump off the rails to get away from him really quickly. So I just like hung out on the top until he did one of his bullshit attacks, then jumped off and shot him afterwards. And that ended up being a much easier way to deal with that fight. Apparently you can like throw a grenade in his mouth. And there's like a mission for it, like a secret objective for it. I swear to God, I threw so many grenades at him and I couldn't get it done.
Yeah, I think there's an achievement or a trophy or whatever for if you throw an egg at him too.
Ooh, that's really good. I gotta do that.
Don't know. I feel like maybe I'm getting 2 things mixed up here, but I feel like that would be a good achievement too, if throwing an egg at him.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because he moves around a lot, so. When you mentioned that fight the other day when we were kind of talking about it, I was like, yeah, that one is.
It's
definitely
like,
annoying.
Old school Resident Evil boss fight, right? Because it's like a square platform that you're just kind of moving around. He's following you around. He tries to bite you, and it's an insta kill. And it's the only fight where you can't like knife your way out of an auto kill. But like the Krauser stuff in this game, 10 out of 10. So good.
hell yeah! That first time you run into him, when he kills Luis,
Yeah.
I just love the lighting in that moment.
It's so
Like
good.
it works. I don't know. It reminded me of it's a really stupid movie. Expendables 2. Like
Okay.
there's a fight in that movie where it's Stallone versus Van Damme, and they're like fighting in like this great graded room or whatever towards the end, and there's just like light coming up from beneath them, and I just think that I know it's like obviously a stylistic choice, but like in that moment where it's like Leon and Krauser are kind of going back and back, and he's like rookie, like all this stuff, and it's just like you're getting a lot of context while you're doing the battle, which I
Mhm.
think is really cool because the Operation Javier was like a on rail shooter thing that they put on like PS1 like back in the day. I can't remember where they put it, or like maybe it was an arcade game. So like them giving context to a game that like barely anyone had an opportunity to play, I thought was really kind of cool. Maybe that'll be DLC. Like it obviously wouldn't be like a on the rails shooter thing that they did back in the day, but like maybe they do like an extra DLC thing where it's like Leon and everything that happened like during Operation Javier. But just like them kind of going back and forth, I just thought was really, really cool. And he's like this, I don't know, just juiced up dude that's just jumping all over the place and
Yeah.
backflipping, and then like you have to do the quick turn and when he jumps behind you and then like block him, and then just like yeah, that's a really, really cool fight. I thought that they did that really, really well.
Yeah, I was just stoked there was like a knife fight. Like, give me a knife fight in the game where you gave me like one of the best knives I've had in a game.
Oh, so
Um,
good.
but yeah, talk about the ending. Um, just like how we felt afterwards. Theory time, theory corner here, right? If you have not seen it, or for folks who have, just to recap, right? Ends in the way that you expect. Also, I really like that scene just because Ashley goes from like being absolutely terrified to having the time of her life in that like Jet C sequence, and it's so funny to me. But again, like
Yeah.
it feels like this cool payoff on like the trust that she's built with Leon, where she's like, he'll get me out of here. I know he will.
Yeah,
Um,
like yeah, we've done this 100 times already in the last day. Like we'll be 100%
yeah,
fine.
so her just like kind of leaning back and enjoying it is, I think, so fun. And it's such like a fun touch. But yeah, like Ada flies away. She gets called by, you know him, you love him, Albert Wesker finally makes his appearance.
It's
Um,
Resident Evil 1.
yeah, I know, right? Crazy
Yeah.
to think that the last time we saw him in Resident Evil was him being thrown into a volcano.
Yeah.
Um, and seems like she like decides to, she changes her mind, changes course. We're changing course is what she says to the helicopter
Yeah.
pilot, which feels meta in some way. And is not going to deliver the amber to Wesker, which in theory means that the Ouroboros is never made and Resident Evil 5 never happens. um but and it looks like she changes and it looks like she's going in the direction that Leon is going.
Yeah.
um, which is interesting, and again, like, kind of sets up that what I mentioned earlier about like, boy, I would love a like Leon and Ada super spy game. That'd be really fun.
Yeah.
Um, especially like if you wanted to do co-op or something. So yeah, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that they're gonna kind of soft reboot from here and maybe make new Resident Evil 5, or do you think that they just do something totally different? Or
You know, I personally do I trust whatever they do.
yeah,
Um I don't know anyone aside from having a good time playing a co-op game with your bud. I don't know anyone that's gonna die on the hill for Resident Evil 5.
yeah, probably not.
Um, it's a good time, like no doubt. Like we did it, like we played it over there a couple summers ago or whatever when we did that.
It's also like still a good time. It doesn't. I don't think it has the issue that some of the other Resident Evil games have, where it's like
Yeah,
impossible to go back to. Like, you can go back to that game pretty easily. It's available and it plays pretty modern. At this
yeah. They,
point.
they just re-released it for PlayStation 4 like what was that, 4 or 5 years ago?
Yeah.
Whenever they like kind of re-released all the Resident Evils, well, the 4, 5, and 6, I think they put on PlayStation 4 at the time or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, they can erase Resident Evil 5, and I'll sleep fine. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure. Yeah.
like will I miss Josh and Chris, the sexual tension? Yes, I will
Of
miss
course.
that. Like, yes, we ship them. They are infatuated with each other. But and yeah, I'll probably miss Chris punching a boulder. Like,
Yeah.
but like there's what they've done with the 3 remakes that we've gotten so far. I just know that whatever they do with 5 is gonna be a good time. Like,
Yeah.
so that's why I have literally no worries about whatever they want to do with 5. I mean, let's leave Africa alone. It's a
Yeah.
little bit of a dated thing for us to do. So, yeah, I think that that's a good idea. It's just like the two most like I don't want to say like convoluted. What's like the right word that like just I don't know. People just they're not in love with 5 and 6. So like at this point they can literally do whatever they want
Yeah.
and somehow tie it into 7, like maybe there's some sort of reference of how things work out, in 7 and when they remake 6, if they remake 6, or maybe they set up things that happen in 7 in 5. Like, who knows what they can do. There's a lot of different ways they can kind of go about it. And even when I mentioned when we were doing viewpoints the other day, there are references to Resident Evil 8 in this game.
Yeah.
Like the symbol from 8 is in the game like a couple times. Did you find it when I
Yeah, I
mentioned
did
it to
find
you?
it.
Like,
Because you can find that forest clearing, right? It's like an optional area, and
yep.
it's on that altar. So yeah, I did. I looked out for it this time after you mentioned it.
Yeah, so I was like, they're clearly we're making connections now to 7 and 8 in these remakes, setting up a way for us to kind of completely forget about the original 5, completely forget about the original 6. Because like I said, I personally don't know anyone that's going to die on a hill for either of those games. And if you do, more power to you, I guess. But
Yeah, but
I
they're just
yeah,
like with OG Resident Evil 4, like this game isn't replacing it. It is just another thing to enjoy on top
exactly.
of it, right?
Yeah.
I will say like the thing that I kept thinking of, when I was thinking of like what we're going to talk about for this, I really like in this game, now that I have some context, the like continuation of the character story, right? I like some of my favorite stuff in this, now having been a huge RE2 remake fan, was like seeing Leon and Ada again and seeing how they interact again and how coy she is and how like over her bullshit Leon is. And it makes me like really, really want to see Jill again.
I know.
And Claire, I want
and Chris,
and
the
Chris,
whole gang.
of course. Like I don't know what Chris is gonna look like because he's looked 40 different ways in every game he's appeared.
True.
But like I was like, man, like I would love to see Jill and Leon go on a super mission together, right? Like I would kill for that. But like just I want to see something that brings characters together, continues like the character's story as much, because I think this game was so compelling for me because Leon is so great, right? Like he's really the heart of it. And Leon's like fine in RE2, right? I think he's charming and innocent, but like here he like comes into his own in a really cool way. In a similar way, I imagine like Resident Evil 3 Jill is, right? Like that's kind of how I felt about Jill. Is like this is not her first go round, and I loved her by the end, right? Like I adored her, and I wanna have that opportunity with other characters. I want to see them interact, and I want to see like where they can go as a group, as a unit together.
Yeah. Speaking of, real quick.
Yeah.
As you were saying, you want to get like Jill and Leon to have like,
Oh, we got Jill and Leon right here.
Jill and Leon right there, like front and center, so
they could be such a cool team. They're both so badass and funny.
Yeah.
Like I just think that they would be so fun together.
Yeah. There's a lot of interesting things that they can do with these, remade characters or remake iterations of the OG characters, but whatever they do, I think that they have a lot to like work off of, and I'm pretty much there for it, whatever they do, whether it's Leon and Ada, Leon and Jill, just Leon, maybe it's Chris and Jill again, or whoever, but like I just think that there's a lot of cool different possibilities that they could do, especially with the RE engine that they've just utilized the crap out of over the last like 4 or 5 games, since 2017, which I think has, I mean,
It's
I
incredible.
remember I remember Capcom before 2017, and I remember not ever thinking about them. Like, it's I don't want to put them in the same realm as like Konami in terms of like, oh man, you guys just do not give a shit about your like IPs anymore. But like, and it's not to say that Konami doesn't care, but like, you know what I mean? Like they haven't really done anything.
Yeah, they're not
with.
necessarily interested in making video games at the moment.
Yeah, we're not making, but thankfully Capcom's not making pachinko machines.
Not yet.
And I'm sure there is maybe a Capcom.
There's definitely
pachinko
some
machine.
Capcom pachinko machine somewhere in some pachinko
Yeah.
lobby.
Yeah, but like, just what they've done with the engine, what they've done with these games, like I said, I'm 100% there for whatever they do, and so there's a lot of different things that they could do, and I just think that, is there a way to have all these characters in the same game? Obviously, they tried doing it in 6, and getting 3 separate campaigns that are like 10 hours a piece is kind of a lot.
Yeah, I mean,
so I kind of hope they don't do that again.
I think they could do it right. They'd have to treat it like a project like this, where it's like, this is a big game, we're gonna treat it like a big game type deal. But like, seeing it, it's like, thinking back, Resident Evil 5 should have been Chris and Jill, right? Like the DLC, which is good, but like, they had to go and damselify Jill in some weird way, put a scarab on her chest so that way she's mind controlled by Wesker or whatever. Yeah, like, do the DLC from Resident Evil 5 as a whole game, right? Like, it's Chris and Jill back together going after Spencer and Wesker by extension. And maybe that can be the reboot moment of like, that's what 5 should have been, and that's what 5 could be, I think.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like Sheva's like a bad character, but she's like just clearly just created so that way Chris has a partner and Jill can still be the damsel, right? Like,
yeah,
she just doesn't do much, and then she never comes back again, right? And I think it's like, it should be Chris and Jill, it should be Leon in some way. Make these stories cross over in some way. I just think that they have a lot of room to work with, and I'm like you. I kind of trust whichever direction they want to take it. And I'm excited to see what it is. I would love them to, with these like kind of forward-seeking eyes, like try co-op again in the same way that 5 did, because I think they would have a much better go of it, and I think it would look and feel a lot better. And I think it could still work for sure. I think it could still be like this and scary and spooky. Like, I appreciate that you are not alone for most of this game or for large chunks of it, but it doesn't ever feel any less tense because of it. And I would love to see kind of what Ashley is, but with like a co-op partner, and like, imagine like you could shoot a guy in the face and then I could run up and kick him. All right, just think about it.
Awesome.
Sold.
Sensational. Yeah, no, I agree with that. And here's one thing I want to say real quick. All the pressure is completely off of them. You've remade your 3 biggest games, and you don't have to worry about it anymore.
Yeah.
Because like, I'm not trying to downgrade Resident Evil 1 or anything like that, especially that remake that came out, was it 2002 or whenever they remade that one for GameCube, but your 3 like most iconic video games, 2, 3, and 4, you don't have to worry about them anymore because you did it, you pulled it off, and for the majority, everyone absolutely loves them.
Yeah.
So At this point, you have no pressure. You have the engine to do it. You have pretty much the freedom and the characters to do whatever you want in terms of remaking 5 and 6. And there's a lot of cool things that they can do because, once again, I don't know anyone that's going to die on a hill for 5 and 6. You know, like you mentioned, like there's still some things to be enjoyed there, and it's not, we're not erasing 5 and 6 like the OG ones, so it's just like you can still enjoy those ones, but there's something really, really cool and interesting that they could do with the next two if they decide to do it, which I feel like they're just gonna do it anyways. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, why not? Like, everyone loves these last three. Well, aside three, you know, three has kind of like its lovers and haters, but like I felt like everyone really loved two. Everyone obviously, I feel like, really loves four. I know there's like the purists out there that I mentioned, but like you can do whatever you want at this point, and I feel like the majority of people who love these games are going to buy 5 and 6, so like why not just write the check already, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're planning it. I'm curious, like, what they're thinking, and kind of to your extent, fly on the wall, like, where do you want to go, right? Like, what do you want to do? You've done all of like the iconic monsters, and you've remade them all. What new is there to do now? There's
and
plenty.
I think it's going to be a while too, honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm 100% okay with that.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know. I'm curious if there's like any desire to do like Resident Evil 9 and kind of continue on the winter story, right? It feels like there isn't, right? Like I feel like you could leave that where it is and it'd be fine. But like obviously the goal is to kind of bring it all together in some way.
Yeah.
And I want to see what that looks like.
Yeah, me too. And like I said, I don't really mind how long it takes, because I have these 3 remakes to enjoy, and I can still go back and play even original versions of them too, and like still feel satisfied. So it's like, you know, and I got 7 and 8 too, like, which are both really good games. So it's there's more than enough time to figure out what they want to do, and like I said, I'm there for it, you know. So I don't know. I guess it's all speculation at this point.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to speculate because just knowing the freedom that they have, I think is fun to think about. And especially with like how well 4 plays and how well it looks and all of that. And, you know, if they do end up remaking 5, like what is that going to look like, you know, with how good 4 looks, you know, like is it 5 going to be a co-op game? Is it going to be, you know, maybe next generation that they put that? Who knows? You know, like there's a lot of different things that they can do, but
PS5 Pro exclusive.
yeah, you know, who knows? But yeah, I don't know if I really have much else to say about it. It's a really good game.
Yeah. Taking the spoiler hats off now.
Yeah.
Back to the closing thoughts here. If you had to put a score on it, obviously just for fun, you know, what would you give it?
So I'll be real right here. So like when I see people give games like a 10 out of a 10, I respect that. Because
I would never do that, but I respect it.
No, it's not that I would never do it. It's just I don't know if it's like hard to say because it's like weird. Like, how do I explain myself? I don't know if I've ever experienced a 10,
Sure.
because a 10 to me is almost like it's just absolutely flawless. I didn't run into anything where I was overly frustrated or was stuck on and felt like was unfair. But even then, a game can still be a 10 because it's like maybe the game was supposed to be like that for you to like think about it and go about it a different way.
Yeah, greater than the sum of its parts type deal.
Exactly. So like, I do think it's a masterpiece, but I would give it like a 9.5, and that's solely just based off of like a couple of little conflicts in the game that I just did not. I was like, man, this is annoying.
I feel that.
But I couldn't tell if it was me or if it was the game. So, I think it was may have been just a little bit of both. I'm specifically, if you want to know what I'm talking about, the castle entrance with the catapults.
Yeah, that's rough.
Boy, oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. Yeah,
I
that got
died there a few
annoying.
times.
Yeah, so I like in that moment, it's like, well, you can actually like take out a couple of these before you even get up to where you need to be to like actually like face all of them.
Hmm.
So I mean, while I have like hangups, I do think that this, and my score is like a 9.5. I do think that this is a masterpiece. I do think it's like, if you're going to play any action, horror, survival game that you want to invest your time in, like $60 for a 20 plus hour game is pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Um, and like the replayability is there. The speed run, if you want to do that, is there. The extra, like the amount of extra content that they just put in the game for you to like dink around with and play around with and put different costumes on your characters and have different accessories for your characters. There's so much stuff there that you can do that it almost kind of feels a little bit like, I feel like I pay $70 for a game sometimes where I feel like I'm missing something from the game,
Hmm.
but to only pay $60 for this game and for them to just be like, "Oh yeah, this is just in here." I'm like, "Man, why like why isn't everyone just follow this model?"
Yeah.
But it's like games as service has obviously kind of changed the landscape a little bit, where it's like, "Oh, well, you have to sign up for a subscription," but you know what I mean.
Yeah. It's cool. Like, it's cool to see a big AAA, you know, single player game not made by PlayStation. Like, not
Yeah,
not not that I have any problems necessarily with those games. Obviously, like, I'm on the record having really loved God of War Ragnarok and Last of Us and things like that. But it's just
yeah.
like it kind of feels in sometimes like they're the only ones making games like this.
That's a perfect way to put it.
And,
Yeah.
and because of that, there is like a tinge to it of similarity. So it feels good to have like somebody else come on the scene and make a game. I would argue just as good, if not better, than any of those games. That's like a different flavor and has its own style and engine and things about it that are unique. And it also just happens to be a remake of one of the most beloved video games of all time.
Exactly. Like if you told me that you felt like you got ripped off from this game, like I would honestly ask you, please explain in great detail why you think you were
Yeah.
ripped off. Like how?
Yeah.
Like
How did you
there's
play this
just
also?
yeah, like there's just so much there and so much variety there. It's just like I did not feel shortchanged at all one bit. Especially in this day and age where most games are $70 now. For them to be like, this is 60. Like next
Yeah.
gen, previous gen, and I'm sure it's because there's still previous gen attached to it. That's probably why it's 60 all around.
Yeah.
But for them to be okay with next gen only paying 62 and getting the same experience, hell yeah, like $60 is not a bad price for what you get here. So yeah.
Just makes it all more worth it. Yeah. For me,
Exactly.
I'm somewhere in the 10 range.
Sure.
We'll see by the time I post this and I like write a blurb for the website and stuff that I have to attach a number to. We'll see how I feel. But right now, yeah, it's just like it had that sauce, that special, that Michael secret
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean? It just
Yeah.
something in the air elevated it to the point where, like, while I was playing it, I was like, I am enjoying this so much,
Yeah.
like more
Yeah,
than
me
I
too.
thought I would, and I knew I would like this game.
Yeah.
But yeah, just like every next moment I got to, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
there's
exactly. It
there's just
felt like a thrill ride.
yeah.
It felt like The Mummy. Felt like The Mummy Returns, like we're Brendan Fraser and
And we're about
there's
to
some
to make everyone in the '90s question their sexuality.
exactly like Leon,
Leon,
like
hello.
I want to be caught by Leon just the same way that Ashley was caught by Leon, my hero,
Exactly.
like that sort of thing. But yeah, yeah, I hear what you're saying in terms of like,
There's
yeah,
something in the
like
air.
this is it. Yeah. Yeah. So
Cool. Well, thanks everybody for hanging out and listening. We hope you enjoyed our review discussion. Andrew, if folks want to follow you, where can they find you?
um I tweet a lot about baseball, so I'm not going to give anyone my Twitter because I'm sure I'm going to bore a lot of people out of that. But I suggest everyone, if you're not already following IP, make sure to follow IP, Irrational Passions, over on Twitter. Follow the YouTube. Uh, these lovely people, you all do like a lot of really good work, and just being able to like check out viewpoints for games that I, wasn't on my radar, but like you and Mike sitting down, or you and whoever is sitting down and like just chatting about a game that I might not have thought of, and like getting your opinion on it, I think is really, really helpful. And I always appreciate YouTube channels that do that sort of thing, like game previews that just like sit down and chat about games, because video games are not cheap.
Yeah.
I don't know if people realize that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to have you and the crew kind of do these videos. So yeah, I mean, if you're not already following Irrational Passions on YouTube, definitely go ahead and do that, and on Twitter as well.
Yeah. Well, it's nice to have an official Resident Evil correspondent, Andrew Taylor.
Yeah, there you go.
So,
I'm sure I'll be back.
Yeah,
whenever 5.
As soon as they announce 5, you have something to look forward to.
Yeah,
this 2 of us coming
Code
together.
Veronica, maybe.
Oh, that'd be cool. I'd be here for it.
Maybe that's a thing.
It's a
that
Claire
could
game,
be a thing.
So I'm curious.
Everyone's asking for it, so
yeah, I'd love it.
Yeah.
Resident Evil 0, who knows? Anything's
maybe.
possible.
Never played 0. Did you ever play 0?
No, I've not played any of the original Resident Evils really, though.
What was it, like 5? It was like 5 or 6 years ago. I remember you and I were texting, and I was working. No, this was like probably 3 or 4 years ago. I was working at a job where I didn't have to be on the phone with people, and I would just watch, or I'd listen to Resident Evil lore videos all day long. So like I have all the lore, but like not
none of the context.
Not a lot of like none of the context, none of the experience. So like I know a little bit about 0, which would be kind of a kooky game for them to remake.
I know it has a train.
There is a train, yeah.
Trains are cool.
It all happens before Resident Evil, the first one, so it's like, how do we get here? But
the good old
anyways,
prequel sequel.
Exactly.
But yeah, thanks everybody for listening. I think right around now, the other big review of the week is going to be Mike and I on Nintendo Land talking about the Super Mario Brothers movie, so go check that out.
Nice.
But yeah, thanks for lending your time, Andrew, and talking about Resident Evil. It's been a pleasure as always.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks for watching or listening, everyone out there, and have a good rest of your day. Bye.
Bye.